Welcome to the Mythicist Milwaukee Show podcast. Before we get started, we'd like to extend special thanks to all the sponsors of the Myth Information Conference 3 coming up on October 21st at historic Turner Hall in Milwaukee. Freedom from Religion Foundation, the Sophia Wolf Quadracci Memorial Fund for Stem Cell Research, author of the new book Mythos Christos, Edwin Herbert, Atheist Alliance of America, Atheist Republic, Godless Engineer, Kenosha Racine Atheists and Free Thinkers, and the Atheist Community of Milwaukee. Your $300 sponsorship includes a table at the conference, 1 ticket to the event, and 1 ticket to the VIP party, as well as a mention on all of our various social media platforms, including this fine podcast. Buy your tickets and sponsorships at mythicistmilwaukee.com. All of us here at Mythicist Milwaukee would like to thank all of our patrons for supporting this show. And now here's your hosts, Rob Moore and Brian Edward. Welcome back live. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Mythicist Milwaukee Show, where we keep an all-seeing eye of Horus on the secular movement. I'm your host, Rob Moore, the Deacon of Doubt in these parts, and with me today is not my co-host of usual. It is Sean Frasek, producer extraordinaire. What's going on today, Sean?
Not much, just getting ready for Reason Rally next week.
How about it, man? A little bit
5 days.
Nerve-wracking. We're all carpooling and heading out there in just a few short days to be involved in the largest atheist gathering on the planet. I don't think it's a stretch. I don't think they're bullshitting when they say that. I think that's pretty accurate, even if only 20,000 people come. I don't know where there's a bigger one.
Right. But I mean, the last one they had 30, 40,000. Yeah, so I'd only assume it'd get bigger.
You would think, yeah.
Especially with the speakers that we have coming. And I guess it's probably okay for us to mention right now that we're going to be live broadcasting it, live streaming it if you can't make it to DC.
Yeah, we would. There will be live streaming involved, and right now they're organizing parties. So if you look for the organizing parties on the website, I'm sure you can find one near you, or if not, a little bit later in the week. Yeah. The link itself will be released so that the general public can check out the Reason Rally, even if you can't make it to Washington, because we know everybody can't travel.
We always tend to do that, don't we? We always tend to take on stressful things. We could have just shown up and just enjoyed ourselves at the event, but we had to go ahead and that none of us would take on anything stressful if it wasn't for you, Sean Frasek. But it's the reason we get things done, because we have a team, and part of that team is some leaders who set goals and expectations, and luckily we have that, and it's brought us incredible distances in the last year and a half, 2 years. Yeah, I agree.
And that's going to land us at the Reason Rally.
Yeah, and it's an honor for us. I don't want to sound like it's a negative. Definitely is a positive. Huge opportunity for us to live broadcast it. So thank you to the Reason Rally team and board for allowing us to do that.
It absolutely is. This is the Mythicist Milwaukee Show podcast. We do it every week at 2 o'clock here on a Sunday, and with various other ones peppered in. We've had some extra ones of late because of the Reason Rally, some guests, speakers who are going to be there specifically to promote that. But in general, we're here at 2 o'clock podcasting from gorgeous downtown Cream City, Milwaukee itself. Brewers are playing. They suck. And Summerfest is coming, and the weather has turned. It's gorgeous out, and we are at the Grand Avenue Mall above the TJ Maxx on the second floor in the Milwaukee Cooperative Space. Come on down and join us for all the things we do, not just this podcast, but the meeting afterwards where we actually plan the local secular movement as it goes. And while we're on the subject, the next big thing after Reason Rally, of course, is Myth Information Conference 3.
That's correct.
That'll be October 21st at Turner Hall. Go to mythicistmilwaukee.com and get your tickets now at a discounted rate, because it's only going to cost more, and it's the big one.
Yep. The long-awaited debate between Robert Price and Bart Ehrman. Can't wait.
Myth geeks all over the world are waiting for that one. So by the time the show comes around, there really won't be many seats left. I'm anticipating a sellout. The first one sold out at Shank Hall, and that was not nearly the headlining.
Oh, and one thing that we don't mention often enough, I think, is the early bird special. You can get tickets at half price until the end of June 2016.
Absolute bargain, because it's not just the debate; it's a conference with speakers including Dan Barker of Freedom from Religion Foundation and Allie Jackson from Atheist Republic. So be sure to get on the website and get those early. Today's guest is Edwin Herbert. He's studied the Christ myth theory, which is, of course, our pet project here, for nearly 20 years. Can't wait to talk to him about how long it's actually been a thing. he's been a regular op-ed newspaper columnist on topics concerning science, skepticism, and religion, and he's president of his local freethought society. So it sounds like maybe he's kind of been where we've been, organizing on a local level, grassroots. He's got a day job. He's an optometrist with a busy practice in southern Wisconsin, and his debut novel is called Mythos Christos. Please welcome Edwin Herbert. Are you there, Edwin?
I am. Nice to hear you.
I just wanted to point out, too, his name has been on the last, 10 podcasts for being a sponsor, so thank you for that. Edwin, you can come to the conference in October and meet him in person. He'll be there.
Yeah, I will be signing books, assuming I have them by then. I certainly should.
Yeah.
The hardcover.
Well, tell us about the book. I looked at the synopsis, and it's fascinating. We had an author of an actual, more of a biography-style book about Hypatia. What you've done is taken some historical characters and created a work of fiction. Go ahead and tell us what gave you the idea and what the book's about.
Okay. Well, what gave me the idea is I was reading all these other books so long ago. Freak and Gandhi were the first ones. I think you had Freak on last year, if I'm not mistaken. Earl Doherty, Robert Price, D.M. Murdoch, Dennis MacDonald, Carrier Lataster, and a couple of others. David Fideler, I don't know if you've heard of that one. That was Jesus Christ, Son of God. That was a particularly eye-opening one, I thought. Kieran Berry, the Greek Kabbalah. So there's some mysticism that I use for the book. Not that I'm a mystic at all, because I'm very much a skeptic. So what I wanted to do is, because there was so many books like that out there that are basically nonfiction, I wanted to try to reach a different crowd, try to get people who weren't as apt to pry open the dusty tomes of nonfiction. And so, basically the synopsis of the book is, a Vatican team invites the young scholar Lex Thomason to Egypt to help them solve a sequence of puzzles left by the 5th century philosopher Hypatia in her attempt to preserve the truth about the hidden origins of Christianity, information the church didn't want exposed. Lex finds himself on an archaeological treasure hunt, but as he unlocks the secrets along the path, mortal peril follows. So what forbidden knowledge would the desperate Hypatia risk her life to save, and Lex jeopardize his to uncover? And the scene alternates between the two time periods. And in both, of course, there's assassins and fanatics and whatnot. So a lot of activity on both sides. This is a historical fiction as well as a suspense thriller, I guess you could call it. Kind of crosses genres.
What's interesting. So is it like the Bible, where we're looking at historical fiction? There are historical events and characters that did exist, but are kind of put in fictional, situations.
Right, exactly. And in that timeline, when we go back to, it's around the year 400, circa 400. I think 391 is when the Christian mob basically comes and starts destroying the temples in Alexandria, as well as other towns.
Now, what was Hypatia's?
The Temple of Serapis was one of the big ones there, and they destroyed that. And that had an annex library, an annex to the Great Library. About 10% of the manuscripts were stored there, and the Christians just put it to the torch. And I guess they were looking to destroy any pagan information, anything non-Christian.
So what was Hypatia's reasoning in your novel? What was Hypatia's reasoning for why didn't she just expose the secrets right there?
Well, because I guess they weren't, in that political climate, they didn't think that would work. You'd have to have proof, and the Christians weren't willing to allow that type of thing under the Emperor Theodosius, and the Archbishop at the time was Theophilus in 391, and they were looking to basically oust you or kill you if you had anything like that. So she had to be careful, and yet she was doing a lot of speeches through the years after that where she was pretty much risking things. And a lot of, pagan knowledge. She was kind of openly pagan. So, In fact, a quote by her is, "All formal dogmatic religions are fallacious and must never be accepted by self-respecting persons as final." So, we know how she felt about it.
Now, that quote, have you vetted that quote? Because based on our research, when we start looking at Hypatia, you can't find any of her work because it was pretty much all destroyed. I think
it survived under other people.
Okay.
Like the poet Paladin talked about her. There were a lot of others that...
Okay. Yeah, because that's where you find the evidence of her, is her students that wrote after she was brutally murdered. And for those that don't know the story, I mean, this is, when we talk about Christianity being the all-loving religion with the all-loving God, it's actually the saint of the Saint Cyril of Alexandria was the one that was given the credit for pulling her out into a public space and stoning her until all of her skin came off. Because she was not a Christian. She didn't want to take on Christian.
He was the patron saint of stonings.
Yeah. Yeah, they actually. Yeah, he is now a saint. I mean, this is the saints of Christianity. So,
he was actually the nephew of Theophilus. So they were both, of the same mind there.
So, besides being a suspense novel, it's correct me if I'm wrong. The novel is directed perhaps at educating people to the idea that Christ may never have existed.
Right, it certainly is, yeah. Yeah, in fact, that's really what it's about. I mean, I try to put pieces in there, pieces of that puzzle to try to get people to realize that this is just a story. This is just a lot of made-up stuff. And I have, in fact, I mean, if you look at the evidence of mythicism, I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about that at this point, but just the silence of the historical record, the emulations of previous Greek, Roman, Egypt mythology, the fulfillments of Old Testament scriptural passages as blueprints, basically.
It seems pretty obvious, doesn't it, once you get into it?
It really is. I mean, it surprises me that people don't realize, it's a pastiche of borrowed and repackaged Greek myths and Old Testament passages, basically.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you there, and now that I've been exposed to it, I'm like, oh yeah, duh. I mean, why would you even question it?
Right,
but people do.
Yeah, right.
What kind of background did you have? Were you a believer at some point as a young person? Were you brought up religious? Were you always a skeptic? What brought you to this?
Well, actually, I was brought up Lutheran, or my mom would have it so. Made sure we were confirmed Lutherans. But I used my dad was an agnostic. He just kind of didn't. He showed up for at church for Christmas songs and whatnot. When we had to do that kind of thing, and otherwise he wouldn't even show up. My grandpa, he was kind of a bigger influence on me. We'd play chess in the summers, and he would tell me stories from when he was a kid in Lutheran parochial school, and how the teacher would beat the kids, just every day. These guys would be beaten. And there was, in fact, one girl in class, I don't know if she had Parkinson's or she had something where she got the shakes, real bad. And the teacher told her to stop shaking, and she didn't, and he beat her. And my grandpa that just obviously, scarred him too from that. And so he was kind of against Christianity in specific and religion in general, kind of a staunch atheist. He would even invite, in his retirement, priests and pastors over to debate the subject, which is kind of unique.
Wow. Well, I was wondering, we've been conducting our research for the last 3.5 years on the mythicist position. I was curious as to how you were first introduced to it, and then also what do you feel the best argument is? Because we know you mentioned a bunch of different authors; they don't always agree on certain aspects of it. But like, what is the best centrist, streamline? Yeah,
currently, like the silence of the historical record. That's not really the best argument. That's just, the Christians. They'll just say, well, yeah, there's silence on the historical record of damn near everybody, but, not if you're going around feeding 5,000 and things like that. I mean, there shouldn't be silence on it, but that isn't the best. I guess the best argument is Carrier's, first of all, that Jesus conforms to the divine king mythotype. If you remember the Rank-Raglan criteria.
Raglan, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, if you conform to that type, they say only legendary figures are on that list, including Moses.
Yeah.
And Oedipus, I think, was the highest. It's like, if someone comes to your door and tries to sell you the idea of worshiping a new god who wears tights and a cape, and he's super strong and he can fly, but he doesn't always because, he's humble.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that is going to give you the impression of, obviously it follows in the type of superhero. So Jesus falls in the type of divine king, which weren't real.
Yeah,
was he segueing into Batman and Jesus for us there?
That was bit.
Nice.
Yeah,
right?
Go for it. Take it, Rob.
Yeah, well, we are in fact producing a movie, Batman and Jesus, that explores those exact parallels. What would happen if, really, what would happen 200 years from now if people start forgetting that Batman was created as a myth, a modern myth, but in the future, how that perhaps could evolve into a mythology when people start losing that the actuality of the information, and the historical record becomes mixed with fictionalization as well as legendizing, attributing actual.
Right. When does that movie come out?
We're looking at 2017. The trailer will be shown at Reason Rally.
Premiering it at Reason Rally.
Yeah, filming is ongoing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the other part of the movie is just taking those two characters and showing how they've evolved over time, how their stories are completely different. And with many different authors, and you start seeing how it changes as society changes and technology changes and all these things. And so that's exactly what we're looking at there. And that's, you had brought up Alexandria in that whole time period. Those Christian sects, that were, eventually deemed as heretical, had much different ways of worshiping. And this is Christianity. I mean, they would utilize pagan traditions and pagan practices. And I think that's interesting, too. I mean, if you're going to say Christianity or Islam or whatever is the one true religion, why do we have so many different practices that historically and ways of viewing the faith?
Right. Which Christianity? Yeah. There were lots of them back then, including that Docetism. If you remember Docetism, that was one of the Gnostic beliefs that Jesus was kind of a phantom. And that was one of the Christianities back then.
Yep. The Jesus that grew to 200 feet tall, the story with the cross talking, the story with Jesus going on a mountain and raping his mother and then birthing another woman and then raping her too. I mean, that is a gospel, obviously not Orthodox, but I realize that in the Gospels of
the Gospel of Rapey. What is that?
It's the I believe that's I don't want to get it wrong right now because but it's out there. I think.
Is there a sense?
Timothy or
is there a sense, Edwin, that Hypatia may have had such a thing, or is this did you make this up in your head out of complete whole thought?
That part I pretty much made up because we don't know what Hypatia was exactly thinking. We just have these ideas that obviously she was giving speeches that seemed kind of pernicious and heretical to the Christian religion. So they were not happy with her, obviously. But I don't know exactly what she thought. So I used her and this time period to do this. Because isn't it plausible after, when you think about it, the Christians burning that annex library at the Serapeum, once they did that, isn't it plausible that, weren't they thinking, gosh, the Great Library could be at risk? The Christian mob is crazy.
Right.
So isn't it plausible that over the next 24 years of her life before they kill her, that she and perhaps a lot of the other philosophers there and teachers, wouldn't they think, maybe we ought to hide some of this stuff? They could easily,
right,
burn this whole thing. It's pretty much, pretty at risk here of the flame.
I think that's evident too in the Nag Hammadi scriptures that were discovered in the 50s in Egypt. Those authors obviously buried that, so no one can come and destroy it, because that's what the Christians were doing. They were going around destroying all of the extra biblical texts, the quote unquote heretical texts.
Right. So you can bet there's more. And that's what my book is about. It's about finding more. But I do it in such a way, or, Hypatia did it in such a way that she didn't want just anybody able to go find it. So she set it up as a treasure hunt, where, of course, the problem there being that if, all of the pieces have to exist and can't be destroyed from fire or destruction of earthquakes or whatever. But she set these up so that someone with a lot of knowledge, aka not the Christians, would be able to find this. The mystical knowledge of Platonism, Pythagoreanism, and that type of thing.
And in her time, only one person was capable of that, according to your synopsis. Her Philalethean. Do you want to tell us what that word means? I looked it up. It did not appear in any dictionary.
Oh, is that right?
What is a Philalethean?
Ancient Greek. Philalethean is just alethean is truth. So it's a lover of the truth. It's really a truth seeker. So her Philalethean, she thought, would be Macrobius's son, is who she was kind of expecting to be her Philalethean, say 20 years hence. Macrobius was the proconsul of the area of Africa, North Africa there. And, he was a writer too. If you look him up, he's written a lot of things about this too. And didn't seem like he was big on Christianity either. And Orestes, the prefect of the area, the governor really of Alexandria in the area, he was helping Hypatia out. So all of this was a problem for Cyril later, the Archbishop Cyril, who managed to get more power to control the lands there. And they took Orestes out at some point. We don't know if he died or if he had a lot of, apparently some kind of damage to his head, an injury. So, around the time when Hypatia was killed, Orestes was also sort of taken out. And then they were removing the Jews from the area and that kind of thing, killing a lot of people.
Your in the modern time frame of your novel, Lex Thomason uses, and correct my pronunciation, the gematria to help him solve the mystery. Tell us what that is, and is that a real thing?
Yeah, gematria is the basically the Greeks didn't have a separate number system, so they had 24 letters in their Greek alphabet, and they added 3 as just numbers, so that they'd have 27. So there's a chart on that in the book, 1 through 9, alpha through theta, basically, and then it goes 10 through 90 and 100 through 900. And they could add then the letters of any word together, and it would have, some significant number. It would equal a number. So every name, every word had an equivalent number. And they used that as kind of a code to, and early Christians and and the pagans often did this. They coded everything because a lot of things they knew were heretical, to whatever the Orthodox thought was at the time. And so there was a lot of that type of thing going on. So all of this is actually very plausible. And let's see, in the diagrams, like certain gods would have numbers, like Abraxas, 365. Mithras was 360, but they spell it a little differently, and it's 365. So it can be, a god of the year, a solar god, in other words, a sun god.
Which is what Jesus is in essence.
Yeah, he really is. He doesn't come out to 365 or anything, but Christos, or I guess the way they wrote Jesus actually came out to 888. They called that the plenitude of the ogdoads, the perfection of the eights. So it was like some kind of perfect number. Everything had to be significant, Oh,
interesting. And I know you had said that Carrier's argument is the best mythicist argument, which I think we tend to agree with. But what is your take on the astrotheological arguments, like the ones that you'd see from like a D.M. Murdoch? What is your take on like the ancient natural gods and the way the seasons work and all of that kind of tie into this?
Right. Yeah. That. Well, that was more. I think Catholicism itself. Parts of the Bible were based on some astrotheology. Yeah, and later as Christianity developed, Christ adopted a lot of the earmarks of a sun god. But, it wasn't like initially, was he a sun god initially? Well, probably not. I don't think there's, that would be credible. But down the line, he certainly became that. And then, of course, Mary, her birth is September 8 in Catholicism. She's born by, she's not only a virgin, but her mother's a virgin too.
Right.
Anna, the chaste and sinless Anna.
No, she came from
all the way down.
Long line of virgins.
Yeah, right. But because of when she's born, like September 8, and when she was assumed into the heavens later on was April 15. Well, if you look at those days, it's like that's just about precisely when the constellation Virgo goes into the house, or when the sun goes into the house of Virgo, and you can't see Virgo, because of the glare. So she's assumed into the heavens. And then when you can finally see her again, it's around September 8. And that's when, Mary is born,
Yeah.
The Virgin is born. So, yeah, there is astrotheology in there. I think there was another passage, I don't know which one, offhand, where it says, John the Baptist says, he will increase, but I must decrease.
Right.
And when you look at it, okay, later on at least, the birth of Jesus is December 25. It's a solar number. The December 21st is the solstice, or 22nd, and the 25th is when perceptibly the sun starts coming north again, and the days get longer. So he increases from December 25 to June 24 when John the Baptist is born, and then he must decrease. So it's basically like there are two aspects of the sun. But this is not the initial story. This is just the mythology that kind of developed later with the Catholicism and Christianity as it developed.
Right, and you see in Malachi and other passages where he's referred to as the Son of Righteousness, and you start getting into that whole, Yeah,
right. So was some of it, early on, was it meant to be like that early? Well, I guess there's that possibility. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting. I think, when you go back that far and you start seeing how this story, it's like they're just essentially pulling what's popular. And you had mentioned the assumption of Mary. I actually had a conversation about this the other day. I mean, this is, if the Virgin Mary births Jesus, you would assume that she would, ascend to heaven, right? But the Catholic Church never accepted that. It was never orthodox. It wasn't until 1950 something. I think it was 52 or something that the Catholic Church actually accepted it as doctrine. I mean, it took that long of a time for them to assume that Mary, or for them to accept that Mary went to heaven. I mean, that's again showcasing society and how it's changing and women's rights and things of that nature.
Yeah.
It's the myth.
It was like a Mary worship.
Yeah.
A station break. You're listening to the Mythicist Milwaukee Show. I want to remind everyone to get your memberships at mythicistmilwaukee.com. Also, support us on patreon.com. You can pledge as little or as much as you can per week or per show. Check it out at patreon.com. It's Edwin Herbert. He's written a book about the Christ myth theory, aptly titled Mythos Christos.
And he's in Wisconsin. How exciting is that?
Wisconsin guy, to have a local guy. Finally, we're always talking to atheists from Texas and Oklahoma and the Bible Belt.
Yeah. We
got a guy right here in Wisconsin. Besides being an author and a man with a regular job, too, and we know you're trying to make money with the book, and you got that aspect of it. Do you consider yourself an activist? Are you trying to get the word out, or is this kind of more just like a hobby for you?
Well, it's a hobby. I wouldn't consider myself an activist, but I am actively trying to get this book out, which is, my way of kind of bringing mythicists or mythicism to the forefront of people's minds, if possible. And the more we do that, the more I think we're going to change some minds. Just because I think this is the actual truth. It's not like another religion that we're peddling here. We have no good reason to do it other than to bring the truth out, which, like we said, was pretty obvious. And that other argument we were talking about with Carrier, it wasn't just the rank Raglan divine king mythotype thing. It was also the pre-existent celestial firstborn son that happened to be named Jesus, who is crucified in space, right, by Satan and the evil archons in the lowest heaven, some misty sublunar realm. Now that is, isn't that, if you show that was the case, that Philo of Alexandria was talking about it, and Paul was probably talking about the same thing. He called them the same names, same epithets that were used by Philo. So, if you have all of this information, if you put it all together, it's an open and shut case. I mean, it's so obvious. And yet there's still so much, there's so much argument, Of course, the Christians are going to argue because they can't possibly take this as the truth. But I think it seems pretty evident.
I think
you guys agree with me.
Well, I agree with you. But I might have to take an issue with the fact that Christians, don't want to get behind this. I think there are certain Christians that would still embrace their faith even if they learned the truth of Christ's mythological origins. I don't think they're necessarily, for all Christian sects, mutually exclusive. Do you, Sean?
You mean that some are still going to believe regardless?
I think yes. I think there. I grew up in very, very liberal New England churches where the fact that Jesus might have been presented as a complete allegory in every way, right down to his actual existence, would not have precluded you from being a Christian and still believing that the lessons taught there were valid as far as a lifestyle choice.
Right, but I'd say the majority of people these days,
certainly,
the majority of these people, the Christians these days, feel that the story is historical and that's what offers them a unique,
the vast majority.
Right, and that's why theirs is that's where the inherent bigotry comes from, because theirs is right, Islam is wrong, blah blah blah, on and on. But
right.
I think you're right. I think ultimately, as time goes on, religions have adapted and evolved to the point where their founders, their mythological godmen, are not needed. If you look at Judaism, how many secular Jews are there? The older the religion,
like most of them.
Zoroastrianism,
right? Yeah.
The founders are purely mythological. Hinduism, they're the 1,000 gods are mythological. Yeah, it can get to that point, but I think right now, what we're trying to do, and I think what Edwin's trying to do, is share this information, because it's so hard to get to the core of this. It takes a long time, as you know, Rob. I mean, you've been studying it now vicariously through the podcast for 3 years, and the amount of time it takes to get to the basis of the argument, the basis of the information. The typical layman person is not going to spend that time. They'd rather take the story that they were told as a child and say, yeah, this is it. This is all I need to know. Let's move on in my life. So yeah, I think popularizing this with books like Edwin's, or the movies like Batman and Jesus and things like that, I think that's going to start changing some opinions. And yeah, I think there will still be Christians that will stay in Christianity once it becomes more popular, the notion that Jesus didn't existed. But I think by and large, it's still definitely needed, and that goes for Islam too. I mean, you start ripping apart the Quran, same thing. It needs to be that really needs to be done in Islam. I think that's a very important job right now.
Yeah, it's just a little more dangerous, apparently. To go right about that, then you're really taking your life in your hands. Which is crazy, but that's why some of the writers have definitely taken pen names and really not divulged much of anything when they do write, other than Salman Rushdie.
Right. Well,
then he got the fatwa put on his head.
Exactly, and he had to have bodyguards, and he had to be protected. And I think I still like citing the first ever paid scholar of Islam in Germany, Muhammad Kalish. I believe I'm saying that right. Where he was the first ever employed scholar in Islam that in Germany, and he, after years of research and doing what he was doing, he concluded that Muhammad never existed, and that literally destroyed his career. He had death threats to his family. He had to move, change his name, things like that. But that is so telling when you actually pay somebody to study this, and that's all you're going to do. And he concludes that Muhammad didn't exist for the same reasons that we are concluding for that, and he even cites the same mythicist position that for Jesus not existing. Is very interesting.
Oh, there's no way to.
Yeah, it is interesting. Although I think Carrier said that he thinks Muhammad did exist, and that there was really no, and part of the reason was there was no mythotype like the Divine King mythotype with a lot of legendary figures in it that Muhammad had been in the list. And that's one reason we kind of can say, well, Jesus more obviously didn't exist because of that, whereas we can't say that about Muhammad.
Where I would challenge...
And Muhammad did write.
Yeah,
he had some writings. Jesus had no writing.
Well, Muhammad also was supposedly illiterate and couldn't write, and actually the writer of the Quran was the angel Gabriel. Muhammad was illiterate; he couldn't write anything. But where I would take issue with Carrier there is the fact that you do have a pre-existing template for this, and that's the Zoroastrian temple. I mean, or the Zoroastrian concept, where you have a king traveling to the 7 layers of heaven, coming down with the word of God, forcing the people, the converts, to pray 5 times a day. I mean, the list goes on and on with the parallels of Zoroastrianism and Islam. And that's one of the things we like to focus on too. And it just makes sense, because where is Islam being developed? You're looking in the Middle East. What was the biggest religion that predates Islam? Zoroastrianism. Early on in Islam, Islam literally had to pay Zoroastrians to convert to Islam. And, eventually when they became powerful enough and they had the government on their side, they just started killing people and forcing them to convert. But, early on, this Zoroastrianism was the superpower, if you will, in that area. And that's where a lot of the Muhammad stories and hadiths come from, is they're literally just stealing it from Zoroastrianism.
It's the Mythicist Milwaukee Show.
Studied.
You're listening to Edwin Herbert. He's got a new book. It's called Mythos Christos. And it's time for a little feature we call Myth of the Day. Are you ready? Mythmeister Antonio, here he is with Myth of the Day.
Well, thank you so much, Edwin, for being on the show today. Today's Myth of the Day is related to Serapis Christ. Serapis, around the 3rd century BCE, was called the Christ or Christus. He's the only begotten Son of God, Holy Savior God, born of a virgin, Redeemer of sins, resurrected believers in their spirit, gave gift of everlasting life. He was called Logos, the Word, called the Good Shepherd, called the Healer of the world, atoning sacrifice, resurrection from death. The cross was a symbol of worship, spoke prophecy and fulfilled it. Miracle healer, giving sight to the blind, and all believers in him are reclaimed, and that is today's Myth of the Day.
Express version.
Yeah. Well, I will say, just to clarify my last point with Richard Carrier, we've had conversations on this topic in the past, and he essentially states that he doesn't study it, so he can't really comment on it too much. So I mean, it is an interesting thing, and it's kind of it's not as well of a known argument that we have in Christianity, but I think ultimately the scholarship will start trending toward the hadiths and the Quran itself, and we'll start debunking a lot of that. And like you said, it is dangerous, and there's it takes a certain kind of someone to challenge that at this day and age. But
right, I haven't studied it all that much either, Islam itself. But yeah, that would be really interesting if you could demonstrate by Bayes' theorem again.
Yeah.
That Muhammad is more likely to have not existed than existed, like was done with Jesus.
Yeah, and I think the problem is, too, it's just like Jesus. You had many Jesuses that existed. You had many Muhammads that existed, in the formation of these religions. So that, again, getting to which Jesus or which Muhammad we're actually talking about in this time frame makes it challenging. That's why we focus on the Jesus of faith or Muhammad of faith, when we're talking about the supernatural claims and flying on a horse with a human head. I mean, this is purely mythological, and that's what we focus on, because it's hard getting to the core of some of this.
Right. Yeah. And then, when you see things like Jesus and Romulus parallels, where where they're both born of a virgin, sons of God, they have followers, Cleopas and Proculus, that both names mean to proclaim. It's like one is copying the other, obviously. Their deaths were accompanied by a supernatural darkness. Their corpses vanish from the tomb. So Jesus and Romulus, Romulus, Livy wrote about that Romulus tale well before Jesus was supposed to have been born. So obviously Mark was using Livy's tale or someone's tale of Romulus when he was adding some of these details to the narrative. So a lot of this stuff, it's pretty obvious that this thing is a story, a myth.
Tell us about the mathematical relationships between the gods, and how does that play out in your book? I without giving away too much of the ending.
Right. There is actually, that was part of the Greek mythology as well, and it goes way back because of gematria. You can see what certain gods their names equaled. What value they had. So Zeus and his two sons, Apollo and Hermes, there's a mathematical relationship among those three, and can be shown in something called a geometric mean, which is hard to talk about because you almost have to see the image, and the image is in the book. That's a diagram in the book. Kind of shows you that the gods had a mathematical relationship to each other. And then later, as the book goes on, you find out that not only are these mathematical relationships in Greek mythology, but they show up in certain stories in the gospel. And such as, I don't want to say too much about it, but the feeding of the 5,000 turns out to be an ancient Greek mathematical work rather than an actual story, an actual something that happened, historical event. Also, the foundation stone of the church, this mysterious calling, Peter calling him Cephas, things like that, calling him the rock upon which the church is built and whatnot. So there's some mathematics there that you find out, and they're kind of eye-opening. I mean, really, when you start pulling apart all these stories and you find out they're basically based on earlier mathematical works or earlier mythologies, or you're pulling them from the older scriptures. You see that somebody was really just at a confluence of knowledge and just kind of put all this stuff together. That's someone being Mark, likely.
This is not a value judgment because I have no idea how you feel about the content, but I can't help but notice parallels between your book and the Dan Brown novels. Between when it comes to genre and general topic, are you a fan of those? I'm a fan of Dan Brown's books. I wasn't trying to make them like Dan Brown's book. It's sort of.
That's a good thing you did it. Yeah, it's a good thing. I'm not a fan of those.
I'm not a huge fan either, but it occurs to me that you may capitalize on a popularity.
I like it goes the other way.
Yeah,
it goes the other way.
You think so?
Yeah, because the Da Vinci Code proved the existence of Jesus, and remember the girl was the descendant of him, and
but it proved the existence of Jesus, but it was a taboo topic.
Right.
The fact that he might have been married, he might have.
Well, and it was BS. I mean, it's based on nothing.
BS. Right.
Yeah. It's all BS.
There's not enough evidence to go by there.
No, but
you're not going to get a lot of knowledge from that book. Actually, see, my book, you're actually going to get a lot more information about the early roots of Christianity by far, but it is a historical fiction as well. So you have to want to learn. You have to want to be somebody who probably would read historical fiction, because there is a lot of that in there. It's just not, the whole book isn't just constant, fast-paced, this is a thriller, type of thing. It's a different sort of feel to this book. So even though the Da Vinci Code and Mythos Christos are actually just about the same length in word count, this is, may not have that same feel. So it's really for people who want to learn about this type of thing and get a good story out of it at the same time.
Well, one of the things, Edwin, that we really haven't touched on, I'd like to help promote. I noticed that you're part of some freethought groups. I'm not sure if it's lacrosse or where they're
in
located.
lacrosse. Yep.
In lacrosse, yeah.
Lacrosse Area Freethought Society. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So, what do you guys do out there? Like, tell us a little bit about the mission and what you got coming up.
Well, what we usually do, what we had been doing, was the what we call a free thinker's perspective in the newspaper. It was really the only newspaper that allowed such a kind of a liberal type of article, and not just. I did a lot on mythicism in that, but most people just wrote kind of about religion and how it's nonsense, and how we don't want religion, church and state, to mix, and things like that. That's about as political as we get. We just want a line between church and state, because there are we have a lot of conservatives in the group as well, fiscal conservatives. So we don't really try to go there. But church and state and various articles is what we did. Now that article has been discontinued since, I think it was just at the end of last year. So we're not doing any more of those. So now it's mostly a social group. We get speakers occasionally. We've gotten Dan Barker and a few other people August Berkshire, a few people to give talks at a meeting, sometimes a public meeting, sometimes just, the group.
Now, what's it like in La Crosse? Is you get some reaction from the community? Is it real religious? Is it no big deal to be an atheist there?
It's getting to be less of an issue. I think when we started our article, we would get a lot of pushback at first in the, sort of the comment section afterwards. Really they were kind of heated about it. And slowly over time, there was less of that. And I think people were just starting to get more accepting of it. Either that or they just, whatever. We'll put up with it.
I think that's a big part of the mission is creating acceptance. It's and even if that just means people get used to you being there,
right.
Part of that. It's all a brick in the wall. It's all a piece of the puzzle that we can look towards a better
normalizing,
future. Normalizing and mainstreaming secular
secularism,
and atheistic thinking in the country. Do you see a happy future? Are you an optimist? Are you concerned about the rise in fundamentalism? Where do you see the future of the movement?
No, I'm pretty optimistic. I think with the internet, with information, I think we're going to see the young people, especially, are becoming less religious. Unless they're brought up in a Baptist minister's home or something. I mean, most of them are, I think, just getting less religious and more open to other ideas. So I'm pretty optimistic about the future. I'm hoping that, within another, 50 or 100 years, that most of this will have been debunked and blown over. And Europe is heading that way, and I think we will too.
You think we'll live to see it, or you think we'll have an atheist president?
Oh,
in our lifetime?
Open atheist.
Openly atheist.
I was going to say, because there's three candidates.
Openly atheist. Yeah, I don't know if we'll live to see it. You and me anyway, Rob.
Right.
In our 50s now, I don't know that we'll live to see it, but hopefully.
I didn't think we would, but I'm
going to nominate Rob for president anyway. So
no, I'll run.
There you go.
I don't care.
I'll vote for him.
So tell people where they can find the book. It's not quite out yet.
The ebook has been out. Yeah, the ebook's been out since February, so you can get that on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or really anywhere.
And you can also get
it. But the hardcover that has been taking longer. We've had some setbacks with that. All the diagrams and the Greek words in it. I didn't think that would be a problem, but it really was a problem for
even publishers.
It was tough.
Dumbed down these days, looking for something easy to do. But you will have those hard copies at the Myth Information Conference 3 in October, where you have graciously purchased a sponsorship and will be selling copies of Mythos Christos October 21st at Turner Hall in
2016,
Milwaukee. Be there and meet Edwin in person. Thanks for joining us, Edwin.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day weekend.
Yep. Thanks a lot. You too.
You got it. Sean will send you a link when the show goes
We'll get the blog up. We'll have all the links to all that stuff. And, we'll have the blog up on the website per normal, and we'll have the links to all of Edwin's work. And, I was excited. It's really good to hear that there's the mythicist position is gaining popularity. Now, Edwin's been doing it for 20 years. Hopefully we get more interest in this topic. But, it's good to hear more people, at least in Wisconsin.
No doubt, right?
Just didn't think anyone existed.
Cool. Thanks, Edwin.
Oh, yeah. Yep, you bet.
Take it easy.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye. This has been the Mythicist Milwaukee Show. Thanks for joining us. We will not have a show next week because we will be in Washington, D.C. at the Reason Rally. We're coming back. And after that, what's coming up the week after that, everybody? You know, Sean? Nobody knows.
Right now we have an open spot.
Oh, an open spot. All
on
right.
the 11th. So if anyone is out there that wants to be on the show, but I'm sure we'll have it filled.
Yeah, we'll have to keep checking the webpage. And
we'll have to see how we feel after Reason Rally, too. Right. It's going to be a long, long day. 12 hours at least in the sun.
You're going to give us a day off, Sean?
No. There's no days off. I'm actually a little upset no one's here right now.
Right? All right. On behalf of everybody here at the Mythicist Milwaukee Show.
Memorial Day, whatever.
Have a happy Memorial Day weekend. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
The Mythicist Milwaukee Show is brought to you by Mythicist Milwaukee. Producer Sean Frasek. Associate producer Melanie Lawson. Engineer Jason Lawson. Mythmeister Antonio Blandone. Researcher Kristen Whitaker-Hood. Closing theme written and performed by Shelley Siegel. On behalf of co-host Brian Edward and the entire team, I'm Rob Moore reminding you to keep it safe and to keep it secular.
Okay, got it.